Hello, welcome everybody. Today we have the Star Trek Voyager Kazon ship. I believe this is the cruiser. I'm not sure of the exact name of it. Obviously this is an older kit. As usual, I've gone ahead and opened it up to try to plan out what I want to do. So I'm getting the top off here. Obviously there's not a whole lot of parts to the kit. It's a pretty nice size. It looks like it's probably, well, this section's about 13 inches long, the main body of the ship here. I'd like to do some lighting, but it's going to be really tricky. There's some really small lights that go on these sections here, I guess the bridge and throughout the ship. And the problem is that they are square, and that's going to be really difficult to replicate a square window at that size. Obviously you have to try to follow it out. So it may just end up being round windows. So if that's the case, please forgive me for taking kind of the easy way out. I just don't know if I can get square windows cut into there at that small size. Also, the way the engines are, or the lit part of the engines are done, it's actually these kind of sections here and this one here. If you look on the box, you can kind of see it right here. You have like these three glowing orange, I guess they're impulse engines or impulse drives of some sort. So they're sealed off, they're not clear. I mean, I guess you could cut away that. There's a couple of approaches. I think what I'm going to try first is, because this is kind of a orangish color, I think if I come in, and I've already started a little bit, I don't know if you can see it real well, is following out the inside of these parts and making it very thin, and then coming in with a light and just shining through that way to where it kind of glows. I've checked it and it kind of works. It won't be super bright, but once you paint it up, I think it may just do the job well enough. Just depends. If that doesn't work, I'll have to look at trying to maybe cut these away and replace them with some kind of clear part. But I'm going to try to do that. I think it can work. You know, light block all inside of here and just leave those sections here exposed to it will have to be a pretty bright light source. Get these to glowing orange. When I held them up to a light source, it does kind of glow orange when you put just like a clear light behind it. So that's kind of the plan for now. Excuse me. It's not a terrible amount of parts. Obviously you got a it joins right down the middle, so you'll have some sort of seam work. It's a shame you had this part here. It could have kind of did a seam, but anyway, I'm going to have to do that. And there's some other little things. You have it's like some kind of impulse. I don't know if it's not a window, it's an orange color, and I'm not sure on the back side. It doesn't give you a lot of pictures. It only gives you just one picture, so I'll need to research this a little bit when I build this up. It has some different colors kind of going on. It has some purples and greens, different places. It's kind of a brown, weathered look to some degree. One part I found interesting as I was looking this over. Can anybody identify this part right here? That was pretty easy. That's on the solar panels of Darth Vader's TIE fighter. That's that section right there. Put that fighter together several times, so we're really familiar. So they obviously used a greeble from that kit when building this. So must not have been a very big kit or studio model when they did this, because if that's the scale, because that part from the old NBC Revell kit, it's probably only about 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches long. Here it's downsized, so about half that. So the original one was probably only a couple feet long. Well, I'm going to get busy. It's going to take a lot to kind of figure out this lighting and how I'm going to run it. You do have these two parts of the hull that come together, and then you have this section right here, which kind of comes up underneath. So I think I can attach the two parts of the main hull here, and that would kind of leave open room to work with getting my lighting. Maybe attach the lighting to this part, and then it'll be all open here and just run some kind of light sources in there. So I'm just going to get busy, and we'll see where this leads to. All right, so I kind of scrapped the idea of trying to light it through the model. This wasn't working out very well, so as you can see, I've opened up these different areas where I intend to light them. That's what the best I can tell from the pictures I've been looking at, that these sections all light, some kind of like impulse drive, I guess. Took a lot to kind of get that opened up. I first went in with my Dremel with this little round kind of burring drill bit and thinned it out from the back, and some of it was already done from trying to light it. See how it would light without removing all of it. That helped kind of removing the excess. With some of it, I took this small saw blade. On this one, I was able to kind of cut all the way through. These were too much of an angle to do that. I had to kind of burrow them out and really had to kind of throw just everything out. My X-Acto knife, assortment of files, sanding sticks. These fingernail files work great because they're very thin and it allows you to get into some thin places. I did have a little bit of a mistake right here. I actually kind of drilled in too deep, and it came out and made a hole right there. So I just put a piece of tape on this section, used a little inexpensive super glue, took a couple of applications, kind of fill it up, and then just sanded it over, and now it feels fine. I think it'll be fine. I don't think it'll be noticeable. So those are open up. We still have to do the windows, and there's these side kind of wings that come out, and I believe that those have like some engine lights in them too. I haven't gotten that part yet. I kind of looked at the parts. There'll be little, it's two parts that kind of come out on each side and they sandwich together. There is space in there for lighting, but of course I'll have to cut away material. Again, there's no clear parts for this to light this, so make it a little bit tricky and a lot of work just to get some engine lights going in this. It would have been nice if those would have been clear parts, but they're not, and we're just having it's just taking a lot of time to just get those opened up. Again, these were a bit tricky to get on each side, but I'm pretty happy with how they're looking right at the moment. Just kind of took my time sanding and filing away, trying to make the openings as smooth as possible. I think I'll work on trying to address the different window lights. Again, they're square in the studio model, but I made this go round. I thought about like cutting away sections, whole sections of like a rectangle, and then adding in the different supports between the windows, but it's just too thin right here. If it was just like some of these other sections, I'd probably think about it, but I think that because this is so thin, or right in these sections that have lights, I just think that would be really tricky, and I'd probably end up kind of messing all that up. So I'm probably just going to go for on lights. We'll just have to be a little adaptation into what it's supposed to look like. But it'll be a lot easier to kind of open those up and light those. All right, I'm at that stage where everything's just kind of a jumbled mess right now. Taking a look, I've cut away the engine sections, and I just used some clear sprue and sanded it all up to diffuse it. I glued that in place first with like this CA glue, and then I took some canopy glue from Zap to kind of just put all on the inside to secure it, make sure it's secure. Also just fill the gaps. It wasn't a perfect fit or anything, but that canopy glue will get in there, so that way we won't have any light leaks coming like through the gaps right here. So that's sealed up. As you can tell, I've just taken some acrylic black paint and painted here for light blocking purposes. And we'll be putting, I have ordered some 5mm orange LEDs. These are pre-wired, and I'll probably use like one for each different light. I'm not sure how I'm going to arrange it. If I'll kind of set it back here so it'll give kind of a glowing effect that fades toward the back. But the black paint is for light blocking, and I've done both halves now and kind of tested, and I think it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but considering this was not open, I had to remove material, and it's just an awkward shape that it's supposed to be round, and then it tapers at the end. So it's just kind of a difficult shape, and it's the best thing I come up. And I think it'll look good once we light it up. It will kind of have that glowing effect. So I got that done. We have this front section that kind of comes down, all put together. There's going to be a light in here to light this kind of window here, a couple here on the side. And I've taken some, again, black paint to light block inside of that. And that one will be somewhere in here, kind of like that. So on these wings that come out on the side, I believe there's also engines here. And on the model kit, you can see the indentation that it makes. And those are lit, so I'm having to cut those away. And there's also one right here that faces forward, a smaller one, I guess a collector, a sod collector, I guess. Not really sure. So you have this and this, and I've already did one side. You can tell I cut away, and probably the best way is just kind of grinding it down with a rotary tool, a sanding stick. I tried just cutting it with a X-Acto knife and cut my thumb a little bit. It's really thick, so I don't really recommend that. I've taken some of this kind of chrome tape, and I don't even know where this came from. My wife may have used this for a project, I don't know, but it's pretty neat. It's very thin. It's made, it says duck, so it's actually duck, D-U-C-K tape, and I don't know how long I've even had this. So anyway, good light blocking material. We're going to light this section here, and again, I'm going to use these 3mm I'm sorry, 5mm LEDs. Now these are a little too wide, as you can see. They have kind of an edge on the back. That's a section material. You can sand that down. So what I've done is sanded it down on both sides, so it'll kind of lay flat. And I'm going to use 3. I kind of have one over here, so I'll eliminate that, and then 2 kind of back away and facing the engine nozzles. And I've already done this one here. And this is this black hot glue that I use, and I really like it. I got it off Amazon. I don't know the name brand or anything. It just came in a pack, but it seems to, I just like how it works better. It dries faster and dries really hard compared to the regular clear. But anyway, and you can use it to light block and other things that you can use it for. So I've connected these 3 wires. Obviously, we're going to come down to the one that goes into the body to connect to our power, but I had to sand all those down to make them fit. And this part will fit over now. It's a little tight, and I may have to go and adjust it before I seal it. But it'll be kind of like that, and we'll have to make some lenses or something to fill in these gaps to diffuse the light. So that will come like that, and then the wires will come off the side here. There's a kind of an open gap here where it fits against the body. So that's where that's at. These sections are there were 2 parts. He's going here, still trying to figure out exactly where they get glued. I may add a little light inside here. This is kind of open, so it may give out like a glowing effect. Maybe, not 100% sure on that one yet. So that's where I'm at. Still a lot of work. Just the lighting. If you weren't doing lighting, I'd have it together by now. But because we have lighting in some odd places, it has to kind of channel through, and a lot of cutting out. So it's just a prep work of cutting all this stuff out to make all that lighting work. Hopefully it'll pay off in the end, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm just going to keep moving forward with this. Alright, I have both of these wings assembled now. There was quite a bit of sanding going on to get the seam lines leveled out. There was a lot of little imperfections in the mold, as you can see right here. There's like these divots on both of them. I had multiple divots. I cleaned it up pretty much on this one, or I'm working on it anyway. You can still see like a big divot right there, and it was all throughout this whole side. I don't see it anywhere else on the model, but both of these wings had all these imperfections in them, and so just trying to clean those up. On this section right here, it looks like on the studio models there's a lot more detail on that section right there, and so I may just take some kind of strip styrene, maybe like this, and add a few rows of it just to add in a little bit more detail on this section. It's pretty prominent, and it looks like almost a kind of a grid, I guess, on the box art you can see here. I don't know if it's showing up, but you can see a bunch of lines going on that one section there. So I'm going to do that, and that would kind of wrap that up. I'll probably end up putting some clear styrene over here to cover these engine outlets and collectors, I guess. But otherwise, it's coming together pretty good. And we'll just keep going forward with that. Here you can see I got the lights in for the, I guess these are impulse engines back here on the main body. I'm running 4 different LEDs. These are orange LEDs, 5mm. I've sanded them to diffuse the light a bit. They're just attached with some hot glue, some black hot glue. And there's 2 right here, kind of in the center of these 2, and then kind of one offset from the other. And now I'm going to take some aluminum foil and kind of cover all this and help reflect and diffuse that light to help give a more solid uniform look. So I'll get that, then we'll take a quick look at it. All right, have the lighting completed on this side. I have some hot spots. They're not quite as noticeable in person as they are on camera. I ended up using 3 LEDs on the back side and 2 on the front engine. As you can see right here, you can kind of make out the 3 bulbs. But overall, I think it's going to be a nice effect, especially once we get it painted. There'll be a little bit, some clear coats that will help diffuse that a little bit more. Very difficult engine to kind of light. So, but I think it's not too bad, and I'm going to go with that. And you can see in here, I just kind of put this aluminum foil to help diffuse that light back toward the outside. And my wiring, I'll condense this wiring, clean it up a little bit, and I think it'll work just fine. All right, well, I think I have all my sections with the lightings finished up here. As you can see on this right side of the main body of our ship here, I have my fiber optics all going into some lights. Now it's a bit of a mess right here. I have everything kind of secured with some hot glue. I did wrap the fiber optics in some electrical tape instead of putting hot glue on top of it. But I have a couple of 5mm LEDs in there that are lighting. There's one going for these and one going for those. But all that and the engine lighting now is just coming out these 2 wires. So when I go to connect everything, I won't have a bunch of wires. I'll just have 2. And on these wings with the engines, as you can see here, I've put some clear styrene plastic. I sanded it up to diffuse the light, and it was looking kind of strange. So to add a little detail, I outlined it with a little of this like bean type or square styrene plastic, and I just went around and put that on there. Also on here, I added a little bit, just a couple strips, just add some detail because this is kind of really plain. May add a little bit more. So I have both of those wings done with the lights, and that'll also be a lot easier when I go to mask it off. I'll have a really defined area now to mask off. So I have all that done. I have the kind of nose section that drops down with its light, and I'll have to figure out something. I'll probably put a little bit of styrene, clear styrene on here. That's kind of too big of an opening on these. I will probably just put some clear window glue on there. Now on this is the very bottom of the ship. I still have to connect our mounting rod, which will probably be this brass rod right here. And I'll have to find a secure way to mount that. So this will all connect in here, something like that. Should be plenty of room. One good thing about this kit, there's plenty of room for all these wires and stuff. You know, I tried to keep as much as I could contained, but I knew that there would be some space even beyond that, as this kind of drops in something like that. And you do have some open sections right here where the wings slide in. So I'll probably need to put some like plugs in there, or I'll have to attach these before I close this up. So there is a lot of room to play with. I can probably push the wires in there. I'll probably leave some gaps. I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to do that. I believe this is the top of it, so it would actually go on this side. So this would actually kind of be in here, along there, and then this would come on top, something like that. So gotta connect that rod, and then I'll be putting the body all together. Also, I need to, for the nose section, the lighting on it, I'll have to do some kind of plug for it to make sure I can connect the wiring. So still got to figure all that out, but a lot of the hard part of getting this all wired up and ready to go is done. All right, here you can see I have the support rod attached to the bottom part of the ship, and I just put this small section of styrene plastic. I filled it all in and kind of sandwiched a bunch of hot glue. I did do a little bit of super glue to hold it in place. I feel like that's very secure, especially with this plastic kind of sandwiching in and giving it extra support. It's definitely not going anywhere. If it's more than enough to hold the weight of the model. And with that plastic there, I think that'll keep it from sagging over time or anything like that. It's really solid in there, and so I'm comfortable with that connection. So now the tricky part is adding on the top part of the ship. According to the instructions, you have to attach these sections first, and then you attach the bottom section next. So I'll have to do all that, but I have to keep in mind the wiring for these wings, or whatever you want to call them, and this front nose section. I have to probably cut open a section. I think this goes right in here. That's something like that. So I'll need to cut a hole through there, run this wiring in there. So there's a little bit of wiring I need to figure out before I start gluing parts together. Don't want to glue our ship together with all our wires connected. All right, I have my main body all put together here. My wires will come out here. Of course, you're going to have a huge seam line going all the way down, as is common with these types of models, these old Monogram models, and just the way they're made. There's a little piece that kind of inserts here in the instructions that has you kind of gluing it to one side and then putting it together. I put them all together and then went inside and just attached it from there. And I've been trying to kind of work all the seam lines out to where it just looks like a kind of embedded part there. I think most of the seam lines are gone now through a lot of sanding. I used super glue, CA glue, to connect it. I did like the back part and just kept working my way, putting it inside, careful not to get it on the fiber optics. CA glue will melt those fiber optics. And then also on the top, I found that was the quickest way, instead of waiting for glue to dry, because you have to really hold it together. Put the super glue in there, and then I have some Instaset, which causes the super glue to dry really quick. And I put it in these little dropper bottles. That way I can just apply a little tiny drop like that, and wasting the spray bottle wastes a whole lot. And as you can see, that little drops kind of spread all throughout there. Now there is this part right here, this top part that kind of sets in. You can see where I've worked on getting that seam line done. It doesn't fit in there real well. There was a lot of work going into smoothing all that out. Once I prime it and get a better idea of those seam lines and how they're coming out, you can kind of see in the back part where I haven't quite fixed it yet. You can see where I'm going to work. And again, I'm just going to use some CA glue. Hopefully I can get it to fit better. You can see if I kind of hold it and get it to fit better. And I'll put CA glue, set it. The big advantage to doing that is that it dries instantly. You can almost immediately go in to start sanding and getting rid of those lines. And that's what I did right here. And there was pretty good lines right here and gaps where these corners met, and they're virtually gone now. I don't think they'll be visible once we put primer on it. If it is, we'll just touch it up a little bit. So I have to glue that right there. And from there, we have to start figuring out how to put the bottom section on. Of course, that will fit into here, something like that. But we have to also have the wire. I have to be able to attach these later and attach those wirings. So I'm trying to figure out that part. There's a couple of little parts here and there that still have to be attached, but it's mostly coming together at this point. All right, well, I have most of the main assembly done here, and it was quite a bit of work to get it to this point. As you can see, I've added in some styrene in different places just to add in some detail. On these wings right here, you can see where I have these strips of styrene. There were some very light raised detail panel lines coming off these wings, but there was some mold release points, those little circles you see every now and then. There was 4 of them, and I had to sand those off to get rid of them, and whatever detail was on there got sanded away. So just went back with some strips of styrene, tried to find where the lines were at. Didn't worry about being exact on that. Overall, I like the ship, but as I'm building this, I don't know if it's the kit or the actual design. It's just a lot of stuff that seems like it's kind of thrown on. These wings and stuff, they don't really blend in well with certain parts. You can see how it just kind of overlaps, and most of it's done that way. You have these parts that kind of layer on top of it. It's like they just kind of built it up, and it doesn't really mold well into the actual design. You have some gaps. They don't give you clear instructions as exactly where these things go. You just have to kind of figure it out the best you can, and then it doesn't fit well. Ended up with a kind of a huge hole right in the center here. You can see where I've taken a piece of styrene, super glued it in there, and then I kind of sanded in the shape. Hopefully that'll block that. It's all together except for a few little pieces. I guess as part of the warp core that will go inside here. I'm just going to paint these separate. These will be like a brass color, and I can slide these in after the fact, and so it'll just be easier to kind of paint those separately and put those in. So I'm just going to leave those off for now, one on each side. There was huge gaps when I put the wings on. I had to do some putty work inside to fill those in. Again, really tricky how these areas come together. At the bottom you have these huge areas where I had to use super glue, some putty in certain areas. This is a lot of work. Obviously the mold line or the seam line is huge. You can see where I kind of covered a little bit of that up. And so from here, what I'm going to do is put some primer on to see where the flaws are at, the major flaws. I got to mask off all my engine lights. I don't have to worry about the fiber optics. I did have a little small goof. I had put some fiber optics, ended up being behind this, so those are now useless. So should have planned that out a little bit better. But I'll still have these. There'll still be some visible down here, but there's a row that was behind this, so that was kind of a mistake on my part. So I'm going to mask off, get some primer, and see what flaws we have. Alright, so here is the base color on for now. This is just the very first level base color, and it was a mix of some craft acrylic paints, several different paints, some grays, orange, terracottas, even put some gold in there. Couldn't ever quite get it quite right, or what I wanted, so I kind of ended up with this kind of off orangish beige color. I'm pretty happy with. Now I plan on doing a lot of post shading. What I'm going to do is take this paint that I have left over, I'm going to darken it up a bit, and then start hitting in some of the panels in different places just to kind of give it some color variation throughout the model. It's going to be, I think I'm going to go with a lot of weathering on this. I looked at the internet. I think I found what was the studio model. It appeared to be somewhat weathered. It wasn't the greatest picture. The model itself seemed pretty large. Seemed like it was probably about 2 foot long, maybe 3 foot long. But it wasn't a very good picture. I looked at a lot of other models that people have built of this, and the colors just kind of ranged all over the place, from browns to reds to very darks to very lights. So I'm just kind of do my own thing. I'll kind of base it off the box art a little bit. But I want to do, I think I'm going to weather it up. I think the Kazons wouldn't take very good care of their ships, and it would probably be much like a Klingon bird of prey. They'd probably be beat up pretty good. So I'm not sure what the degree of weathering, but I think that would make for a nice looking model, because this color tone is kind of plain to me right now, and I just want to give it a lot of character. So first thing, I'm going to do some post shading, and we'll kind of go from there. Alright, as you can see, I have a lot of the detail painting done. I went back over, once I did the base coat, I had some of that shade left over, and I added in just some dark brown to darken it up, and then went back with my airbrush, trying to hit like the recessed areas. Some places I've tried crossed over just to start working on giving it artificial shadows, a little color modulation throughout the model, and I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. I think that already starts adding to the character of the ship and giving it a little bit more of a realistic look. Now you can see I've done some detail painting in here. I have these inserts here. They look like they're in the picture kind of this brass color, and the brass I had is a lot more stronger color, almost a gold, so I mixed in a little bit of silver, or actually it's aluminum, and that toned it down just a bit, and I think this is a much better color. There's some inserts there. That was some pieces that I originally left off, painted those separately and put those in there, just hand brush those. Now on this color detail on the front here, looks like it's kind of some reds and greens, almost purples more than reds. For the green, I used this Sick Green from Game Air, and I mixed that in with some of that aluminum paint to kind of give it a metallic color, and pretty happy with that turned out. And to get the purple, I didn't have any red, or I didn't have any purple, so I used some red and blue paint, mixed it together, and then added in a little bit of the aluminum paint again, and that produced a pretty nice shade, and did that on both sides. So, and a little bit of that paint also on a few other detail parts there. So I think I'm pretty good on the painting. There'll be a little bit more, but I think we're good there. I have to clear coat this because next I'm moving into doing some washes. As you can see, I've also trimmed up all the fiber optics, checked the lighting, everything's looking good. I've removed it from the back and pretty pleased with how the lighting's turning out. And so here I'm just going to do some washes again to start darkening it up a little bit more and giving it a little bit more character, a little bit more of that used look, and we'll go from there. I don't know how much weathering I'm going to do, how much damage or anything like that, because I'm starting to be pretty pleased how it's looking at now. That coat of airbrush with the dark brown, I think that really added. Just really kind of, like I said, creates some artificial shadows, brings out the detail. It separates out some of these bulges a little bit better when you're just kind of looking at it. The color adds in a lot to it, gives a little bit more personality. So it's really starting to come together. I'm pretty happy with how it's all looking. And now I'm going to finish up the model. When we come back, we'll look at the finished Kazon cruiser. All right, well, here's my finished Star Trek Voyager Kazon cruiser. And very happy with how it turned out. I think at the very end it really kind of came together with the paint job and the different things that I did to it. And for a while I wasn't so sure, it wasn't really my favorite design, but I got to say now that it's completed and finished, I'm very happy with how this looks and how it turned out. Definitely a very challenging model. All the body work, doing the lighting, there's no clear parts, so all that had to be addressed. It was worth it, and I'm glad I took on the challenge, and I'm glad it all worked out. Now I finished up doing just a bit of weathering of different types. I did a oil wash using this burnt umber, and that's this kind of a dark reddish brown, rusty brown, very dark brown with a hint of red in it. Oil wash, mixed it in with some enamel thinner from Testers, and did like a full wash, and then I went back over and then just like dabbed bits of oil and took a dry paintbrush to kind of do some of the streaking. If you can see along the different sides, a bit of the streaking to stick in that dry oil. Now every time I would do something, like I would do the wash, dry it off, I'd take a rag and kind of remove all the excess. Every time I would do that, I would put a coat of this Testers dull coat on it to protect it, and then I would go back over with a different pass. So I did the wash, then I did a little bit of the dry brushing with this little, just a little point of this oil paint to kind of give it that streaking effect. And then I went in and did some work normally with pastels. Now if you're looking for a cheap alternative to pastels, you can go to your local dollar store and find one of these makeup cases, and you might feel a little silly buying makeup, but these are really cheap, but it gives you these different colors. This one has the colors I used most here was the black, and you got kind of this really dark gray brown here, a little bit of this other kind of tannish brown. So those were the three colors I was using. Just taking a paintbrush and going in and really hitting these recessed areas in here to kind of bring out the shading, make out, some artificial shading, modulation in the paint, roughen it up, getting that weathered look. Again, I would do an area, put a little of the dual coat on it to protect it. I did put in, there's a few decals. The kit comes with these, you can see right here, there's these little square window decals. I just put a couple there just for a little bit. I was going to do more, but then I decided against it. So let's light this up. As you can see here, we have all our lights are working. So that's always a plus when you get it all together and all your lights are working. And so if I can bring this closer, really happy with how all that engine lighting turned out. I thought that it was definitely a big challenge to cut out into small spaces. It's not, there was no clear parts, so you have to create your own clear parts and kind of engineer all that and all the wiring and then connecting it the way the model goes together. But in the end, very good. Kind of wish I would have did a little bit more lights. It looks like it probably could have used a few more, but overall, really happy with it. And those were all fiber optics. And so that was the project. Hope you've enjoyed it. And until next time, everybody have a good one.